Zoe, great to see you. Thanks for making the time to come and have a chat. I know you've got sore legs because you were just telling me about all the exercise you were doing at the weekend and how knackered you feel. So I appreciate you making a bit of time to come and have a chat with me. I wanted to kick off by asking you about something that we talked about when we met a while back, and you said to me, is quite an interesting statement. You said to me, AI will not be your assistant. And most people would disagree with that, but a lot of people think, "Oh, great! I'm going to have to use AI for everything at the moment." But you've got a totally different view. I mean, why did you say that, and what's important about it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been sat in the admin world for the best part of 19 years. And I think anything that I have learned along that journey is as an assistant, you need to be able to have that emotional intelligence. You need to be able to understand, how that person is operating. That is something that AI just doesn't have the ability to be able to do. That doesn't mean, for example, we utilize AI across our business. And, it's really helped to sort of shape some of the platforms that we have been utilizing. However, from an assistant point of view, and bearing in mind, as an admin agency, we are hybrid. So we do go and visit our clients. It helps us to be able to understand them on a more intellectual and personal level for us. And what that means is that we're able to understand the body language, we understand, the tone of voice. We're able to understand all of the requirements. If you look at some of the memories that some of the AIs actually build into their infrastructure, unless you are unbelievably specific with it each and every single time, you're not always going to get the outcome that you require. It's kind of like having a toddler running around with you. You have to ask it to do things in a very, very specific way in order for it to be able to provide you with the best possible outcome. That's not how assistants work. You could probably say that we have this kind of like crystal ball, and yes, relationships are built over time. But for the likes of us, we get one small instruction and we know exactly what that means. We know exactly what we need to do to be able to get that completed. It's not just about the task, it's all of the smaller tasks that kind of like take place in order to be able to add up with that. If you take a small example of, booking a particular trip for, a business excursion, for example, it's not just a case of being told that we're going to book that trip. We know everything that needs to take place with regards to that with one simple instruction, which is, I need to get to New York next week. We know what that means. We know that we need to book the flights. We know that the flights need to be booked around that particular schedule. We then know that the cars need to be booked. We then need to know, all of the allocations for where in New York that person really kind of like needs to be. And we know what visas, working visas or ESSAs needs to be in place for that to be able to happen. That's with one simple instruction. With AI, and maybe in time it will come to that, but at this moment in time, it's not that way. It's not how AI works. And I've seen this as a virtual assistant. Obviously, we work with a multitude of different clients across multiple different industries. And everyone's having the same conversation. Oh my God, is AI going to take over my job? And the simple fact of the matter is that no, it's not. It's just a case of you use AI to excel yourself in certain areas to build out certain skill sets. And my biggest concern with the likes of AI is actually, especially if we look at, certain generations, they are you're not using your brain power as much. So for the likes of us, when we are looking at the assistant population and in other industries, you still need that power behind AI. You still need that human. You still need that emotional intelligence to be able to drive projects forward.
And let me ask you a bit about that because as I was listening to you, I mean, it seemed to me you talked about two different things there. I mean, you talked about, if I've got to book a flight to New York, I need to know about the schedule, I need to know about who's going with them. That seems to me is all about context, which is not quite the same as emotional intelligence. Now, I get the context bit, and I think that my take on it would be that AI will get that soon. Tell me about what you mean when you talk about the emotional intelligence piece. I mean, what does that actually mean in a practical sense? I mean,
Absolutely. Yeah. So for the likes of an assistant working with an exec or, a business owner, we understand that person inside and out. We don't just understand the tasks that are kind of like coming through. We understand when they work better, whether that's in the morning, whether that's in the afternoon. We understand their tone of voice, how they might say something in person or how they might say something virtually or even
Or
through a
perhaps how
chat.
to handle them if they're in a bad mood.
Exactly. It stems off of all of those things. It also stems off of body language. We understand that. We understand exactly what is going on with our exec and who we are working with from a clientele point of view in order to be able to understand how to react to them
Right.
accordingly
Okay.
and to deliver what it is that we need to deliver for them.
Okay. But let me ask you about that final point there about delivering what you need to deliver. I mean, I'm not sure everyone understands what an executive assistant does. I mean, just spell out for people that perhaps haven't used an EA service. What is it that you do for executives? I mean, just kind of give us a flavor of that.
Of course. So, I mean, across my career, I've had many different titles across sort of like the admin world. There are many different titles. I think a lot of people are not aware of that. You know, you've got office managers, you've got personal assistants, you've got executive assistants, you have virtual assistants, which is now the world that I particularly sit in. If we look at a broad aspect, you know, we're handling all of the back admin operational support that is required for any business to be able to move forward. We're doing all of the things that, you know, a business owner should not have to be doing on a day-to-day basis, you know, expenses, travel, social media, marketing, um, any of the, you know, the travel that needs to take place in order to be able to meet their clients so that they can focus on their client growth. And those are all the different bits and pieces that we handle. And especially from a virtual assistant, that is such a broad spectrum of stuff that we now complete. We're talking CRM management, so we're handling what that looks like in the background. We're handling all of the system setups. We've had, you know, last year we took on a client who had literally just built her business. So we've helped her scale her business from the day that she started right to today. And long may that continue. And we've helped with the CRM setup for her. We've helped with the project management of the website design, with all of her accountings in the background. With her newsletter support, with conferences that she wanted to go to and speak at, and then managing all of the social media that happens beyond that as well and at the event. So we handle all of that stuff so that they don't have to, so that they don't have to
Yeah.
worry about it.
Okay. And what sort of clients would buy that service? I mean, my experience, and this is probably out of date, is that uh, relatively large companies would buy that supporting, sometimes for their senior execs, perhaps especially if they're on the move a lot. I mean, if
Yep.
they're, working remotely or, what's your, in terms of your business, I mean, who are your main clients? Who's buying that from you?
Oh, speaking for myself as a founder, I'm buying that service. You know, one of the first things that I did when I built Premier Admin Services was I hired a virtual assistant to be able to support me on certain endeavors so that I could focus on growing the business and moving it in a course that I wanted it to be able to go in with the support there. It doesn't mean, you know, I worked at JP Morgan for 12 years and yes, absolutely, that is a place where you would expect to have an executive assistant and providing that level of service. However, um, one of the biggest investments that a business can make is by having an assistant. Yes, okay, so that's a cost that you might not expect to have so early on when you're building a business, but actually the turnaround, it pays for itself because whilst all of the you wearing multiple hats as a founder. So you're the marketing person, you're the salesperson, you're the pitch person, you're the accountant, you're handling all of the presentations, you're the website developer, you're handling all of these different scenarios. Where is your focus at being an actual CEO and bringing in the clients? You become very limited on your time, and that time piece is very important. What we do as assistants for any business owner at any level is give you that time back so that you can focus on bringing in the business that you are looking to achieve.
Yeah. Okay. I can see the logic to that. And what is it that set you on this path? I mean, you've set up the business, you've got a bunch of clients. I mean, what made you decide to kind of turn your experiences of being
Mhm.
an admin manager, for want of a better way of describing it, into running a business like this? I mean, what made you make that jump? I mean, it's quite an interesting decision to kind of change tack like that. I mean, what was behind that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've never been a founder up until this point. And it was something that I never thought that I would be able to do. But, here we are 2 years
Yeah.
later, like moving forward and growing, which is fantastic. I think for the likes of myself, I really wanted to be able to give back and give back in two different folds. So I wanted to give back to the assistant population. They are the core of any business. And when I look back at myself when I first started on my assistant journey, I was never really kind of given the safe space and the support and the opportunities, and the mentoring to be able to excel. I did that all of myself. So one of the biggest areas of Premier Admin Services, and by building the agency, is in order to be able to build a small community, but also give back to the wider assistant population. And that's through mentoring, that's through guidance, that's through posting about, my own experiences to be able to help them on their own journey so that they don't feel so isolated. The other thing was to be able to give back to business owners and to content creators. It's another area that we support. And the reason being for that is 9 months into my JP Morgan journey, it was actually one of the managing directors there that took me underneath her wing to be able to help me to grow and understand what it meant to be in an assistant. And from then on, I've only ever wanted to be able to give back to people. And therefore, that's exactly what we do with Premier Admin Services. We've built this really lovely boutique company, an agency where it is, really personable and authentic, and we are able to give back. We are able to give our point of view on how the businesses are running and what's happening on the ground. And therefore, that gives them that circle of trust with us so that they can focus on what they need to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you use that word trust. I mean, I remember many, many, many years ago when I had a proper job. I mean, I had a PA, and over time, I really came to trust her to do the things that she did well, to get on with us and do them. And it was great not having to, constantly sort of second guess that. And that is actually that trust, knowing that somebody's going to do the things that I mean, there is actually a tremendous amount of value in that. I mean, I can see that. And in terms of the business, I mean, how are you going to define success? I mean, at what point will you be able to say this business is a success?
I think success is a really interesting word. And I did a post about this, goodness, a really long time ago. And I think success is really different to other people. And I think actually success is not defined by an actual thing, it's defined by a feeling that you actually feel.
Right.
Uh, for myself and the subcontractors that we have across Premier Admin Services, for us, actually, our success comes from the wins that our businesses actually gain. Because if they're winning business, it means that we know that we're doing the right job behind the scenes to be able to help them to get to where they need. And they celebrate that with us. But in return, they actually celebrate the wins that we have within the business as well, which is really fantastic. It's that two-way partnership, it's that two-way relationship that we have with our clients that makes it really special.
Hmm. And where do you want to be in 5 years? I mean, just give us a sense of the direction of travel here.
Ah, 5 years is another really interesting area. And listen, I'm going to bring that awful C word into this conversation because if I look back at COVID, everyone who had a 5-year business plan or a 5-year sort of like personal
They got
plan,
in
like
the water.
it was wiped off the slate, like
Yeah.
straight away, and people didn't know what to do. So I find 5-year plans to be quite rigid. I find them to be quite set in stone. For me, it's all about having a flexible framework in place, which, I've built for the business and that I, advertise out there because that means that it is evolving with me. If I look to the future, then we've got more amazing clients. We've got maybe a team of sort of like 10 wonderful subcontractors that work with Premier Admin Services, and we are just being able to project out there what it actually means to be a virtual assistant, what it means to be an executive assistant, what it means to be hybrid, all of those different key factors that we deliver within the business. And then for us to be able to have really long-standing clients, so far we've got 3 or 4 of our clients who have stayed with us since the word go of the business starting. So long may that continue as well, where our clients do stay with us for a really long time rather than it being just sort of like short turnaround projects.
Yeah. And again, I mean, to pick up your point there, I mean, having long-term clients is pretty rewarding, isn't it? I mean, it's rewarding financially, but it's rewarding in the sense that you feel you're doing a good job because they'd leave otherwise, which is
Absolutely. Yeah,
important.
that's
Morale.
the kicker when it comes down to running this sort of business. We could lose our clients tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I feel very fortunate that we have such a strong connection within Premier Admin Services that projects out to the clientele that we do have. And we really do care. We really do integrate ourselves within the businesses. And I think that really kind of like helps keep our clients with us.
And let me ask you about that. That phrase you just used there, keep our clients with us. I mean, what would you say? I mean, because it's a very competitive market, the game that you're in. I mean, you're competing, you could be competing with companies from, I don't know, the Philippines or whatever. I mean, you are competing effectively in a global market, aren't you? What would you say is the thing that gives you your kind of competitive edge? What would that be in your context?
I think so. I would say twofold. So to answer your question directly, we mix that EA/VA feel, right? So it's that corporate edge with that virtual assistant
Yeah.
lifestyle. We're hybrid. We do go and visit our clients on an ad hoc basis, and we make ourselves very much so known. And it's in order to be able to build those relationships as quickly as possible and to get that trust as quickly as possible. Everything is so remote, as you can imagine, during sort of like being a virtual assistant. So for us, it's how do we build that trust as soon as possible? How can we deliver as soon as possible? And it is, let's get in front of them in person, even if it's just for a coffee introduction, as soon as possible. What I would say is one of the things that I really love about the virtual assistant community is actually very collaborative. There
Mm.
are so many businesses out there, and not one size fits all.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time it is a case of, do you know what, that client doesn't quite fit what we're doing, and we can't kind of like match up. However, I know the perfect virtual assistant for you, and I'm going to introduce you. And that happens actually quite a lot within our community. We share a lot of insights, we share a lot of knowledge, we utilize that as almost sort of like a collective community amongst all of us. We've got VA memberships that we generally are all a part of, and it just works really well.
And what about your shift? I mean, because you were an executive assistant and now you've shifted to being the CEO. I mean, that's
Yes.
quite a big sort of jump. What's your kind of feelings about that shift, and how do you feel about being the CEO as against being the executive assistant? I mean, I know you enjoyed being the executive assistant because you talked about that previously, but what's your thoughts on that shift and the role you as the CEO? I mean, how do you feel about being the CEO? It's a different thing, isn't it?
Yeah, completely different. It was really hard kind of going from that behind the scenes element, that person, that go-to contact behind the scenes that everyone would kind of like go to being the front and center CEO of a business where now it's all on you, it's all on your shoulders, it's all of that responsibility. You are the final person making all of those decisions. It's not like I've got an advisory board or anything like that I kind of go to. It is all me. And it was really tough. But I think what I've been really lucky about is over the course of my career, I've built a very strong network around me.
Mm.
So if I do have questions, I'm able to ask. I've invested in a very well structured mentoring via not only businesses who have run extremely large businesses, global ones, to VA mentoring as well by somebody who has been running their business for many, many years, a lot longer than what I have. And I think it's that invest inside of it that has helped me have that mindset shift of, I'm not it's not just about doing the executive work anymore. It's about being able to combine and logically structure out when I'm going to be a virtual assistant during my day and when I'm going to be a CEO. And it's having those boundaries, and that has worked out really well.
Yeah, yeah. And let me ask you about is just to pick up the point about being the CEO. I mean, I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, I mean, and I say this to a lot of people I interview. Building a business is a bit like riding a roller coaster. I mean, there are ups, there are downs, there are good days, there are days that really aren't so good. I mean, what is it about this business that kind of, gets you to bounce out of bed in the morning full of enthusiasm and kind of get on with the job? I mean, what is it that motivates you?
I'm definitely a go-getter. Every day is a new day. I will never, I might have a bad day today, but then tomorrow is a new day and you push forward. I've got responsibilities, I've got accountabilities, I've got a team of people that I need to make sure that I am always on top form for. But also, it's about myself. This is what I wanted to do. This is what I chose to do. Now, I could, if I really wanted to, just turn around and be like, do you know what, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm gonna go back to, I don't know, JP Morgan and get myself a job there. But it is the fulfillment that you get seeing things unfold every single day, whether it's good, whether it's bad, because even if it's bad, you're still learning, you're still moving forward. And it's that learning piece that is really interesting, that helps me personally to be able to move forward, and having people get excited about the ideas that you have. I've got people who work with me now on social media, on website development for my own business, and getting them so excited about what we're doing, about what we're achieving, about the support, about where we want to end up. That keeps me going every single day.
Quite exciting. I mean, it sounds to me that it's actually quite exciting, that component of what you do. I mean, because it's as you said, no 2 days are the same, are they?
No, they're really not. They really differ. That's very exciting for us as well, and especially from an assistant point of view, you want to be able to keep things really varied.
Mm.
And that's exactly, especially sat within a virtual assistant role, it is so varied. You're working with a multitude of different clients, all with completely different personalities, all with different goals and values, and team structures, and you are a part of every single part of that. And that makes it very varied. It makes it very interesting to be able to work upon. And it makes a really nice working day because you
Yeah.
just don't know what you're going to walk into.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I mean, one of the things that's interesting about that, I mean, a lot of entrepreneurs would describe things in a similar ways, but I think it's partly the kind of entrepreneurial mindset. You've either got that kind of mindset or you haven't. I mean, you can develop it, but you've either got it or you haven't got it. It's all, but so my question, I suppose, is you've also got a big team of people that you've got to kind of keep on the front foot. You've got to keep them as motivated and as focused as you are.
Yeah.
How do you, to use that phrase, how do you keep the business and all the other people that you've got, if you like, on the front foot? I mean, how do you do that? I mean, I'm talking about how you motivate and corral your group of people to deliver at the kind of standards that you want to. I mean, how do you create a culture where people can thrive and perform well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess one of the things that was really important to me was that virtual assistants partnering as subcontractors with Premier Admin Services, they needed to feel like an absolute priority, because the fact of the matter is they are. If it wasn't for those subcontractors working with Premier Admin Services, we wouldn't be having this conversation today. We wouldn't be where we are at today. One of the things that I really wanted to ensure was delivered was pure honesty. So I'm very open as to where we stand with the business, with the subcontractors that work with us. We also get together. So just because we're virtual assistants doesn't mean that we can't have some in-person time. So we do have socials together where we can get together, have some activities, some food, some drinks, and generally sort of like have some time to talk about everything as and when's needed. I also invite all of the subcontractors at any conferences that might be, going, the PA show, for example, is something that's really great for assistants to be able to attend. I invite them to that. They shouldn't not have that opportunity. So it is providing those opportunities. In order for them to be able to learn and grow. And also all of these virtual assistants that work with the likes of myself, they have their own businesses that they run as well. So it's kind of having that small community together where it is a team. We, on bad days, if somebody's having a bad, we're there. We are absolutely there. I don't like to utilize the terminology family because I don't think that sits right with any business, but we are a community. We are a team of people who do come together. We do fit well together, which is very exciting.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it sounds to me. quite a supportive place to work, which I think is probably a positive for a lot of people. I mean, not everyone wants an environment like that, but a lot of people, value that sort of collective support, don't they? Let me ask you about your values. I mean, how have your values shaped the way you've built the business?
Yeah, yeah, key thing. I think my values have always been very sort of short and sweet, and they match for not only for our clients but for the business as well. So it is down to respect, honesty. I've been a part of and heard horror stories with regards to execs and how they handle their assistants. It's not something that we put up with at Premier Admin Services. We are a team of people who provide a lot of care and attention to any business that we're supporting. Um, so our values are very important to us. And we're very upfront about that with our clients, but actually it's a two-way street with regards to that. So we've never really experienced a problem, which is fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing that interests me about building a business in the kind of modern age, if you like, the I mean, there's so much uncertainty around. I mean, there's all the sort of geopolitical stuff at the moment in the Middle East and all the rest of it. Plus there's all the other things. My question is, how do you, as the CEO, kind of find your way forward through all the uncertainty? I mean, how do you respond to that? And to come back to your team, because your team will be worried about those sorts of things. I mean, how do you find your way through all that uncertainty?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, this world has gone through so much
Mm.
over the past, God knows how many years. Um, and yet people have still survived. People have still kind of like pushed through. And we do exactly the same. We crack on with what we need to be able to do on a day-to-day basis. We're making sure that we're staying communicated, all of the time. I cannot allow things that go on outside of this world affect Premier Admin Services. And
You're
that
saying you focus on stuff you can control.
exactly, these are the things that I'm able to do and put in place. And that's exactly the way that we move forward. I have never been a person who, if something is out of my control and I generally can't do anything about it, I have to let that go.
Yeah.
And continue to move forward in my own way. That might mean changing, in a slightly different way, but never at this moment too untoward.
Yeah. I mean, I share that with you. I mean, I've stopped worrying about stuff I can't control because I've learned over a long time. There's no point.
You'd never
Um,
sleep otherwise if
yeah,
you didn't
that's right. That's right.
worry.
Oh, no, I'll ask you about what keeps you awake at night in a minute. But the other question that's kind of related to the uncertainty thing is the noise. I mean, the thing about the mod days, again, and I suffer from this. I mean, I get easily distracted. I think, oh, that looks interesting. I'll maybe go and do that. How do you find your way through the noise, all the distractions, which is the kind of other part about staying focused? I mean, one is about uncertainty and not knowing, things not being predictable. The other part of that is all the noise that could distract you, and when you've got to stay focused. I mean, how do you deal with all the noise?
It's just been staying focused. I think that's something that assistants take a lot of pride in. I think a lot
Mm.
of entrepreneurs take pride in that as well. You have a goal, and that is to keep moving forward by hook or by crook, and that keeps you focused. I think it is having somebody by your side that holds you accountable. So, for example, having a mentor is always really good because you're continuously meeting up with them. And if you haven't actually delivered on what you said that you was going to deliver, it actually brings on a lot of guilt, because you know that you haven't moved the business in the way that it should be. I also like to really structure out my day so that I know these are the key areas as to where I'm going to work. So this is my client time, this is my CEO time, this is I can do whatever I want, chores, distractions, time as well. And for that, that generally makes me work a lot better. You know, my calendar, for example, helps me to also maintain that accountability so that I know where I need to be continuously. And because of that, you know, especially over the past 2 years, you know, I used to go to the office every single day. That was that routine, that structure, those boundaries, to working from home every single day. And then you've got all of the distractions kind of going on around you. So how do you implement then your own routine and boundaries as to when your working day starts and when it finishes? And it is having that calendar. We all live in calendars these days. I don't know anyone who doesn't, if I'm honest with you.
Well, I've
And
come across a few people who, as far as I can see, don't live in their calendar, but that's another
they
matter.
need to meet me.
It's interesting, you see, because one of the shifts that's happened is that, like me, once upon a time I used to go into the office every day. Now work from home. Well, the upside from working from home is I don't have to traipse into the office. The downside is that I can then easily get distracted. So it's a really interesting kind of byproduct of the
Yeah,
increase in remote working. You know, and it's a sort of a slightly different challenge. I mean, the great thing about having a routine of going into the office is, well, you go into the office.
it's a
Don't
purpose.
have to do
Yeah.
that now. I could do anything, which requires you, not you, but people to think more about what they should be prioritizing and why.
Absolutely. It's you are continuously acting with intent. No matter what you are doing when you are a remote worker, you are acting with intent. And also, you know, we've got clients who are relying on us every single day to be able to deliver. If we're getting distracted by the washing machine, that's not going to do them any good, and therefore it's not going to do the business any good.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I mentioned a second ago about things that keep you awake at night. I mean, what would you say as the CEO? I mean, what sort of things keep you awake at night?
Um, I think the only thing I mean, does anything the only thing concern is probably what I would turn around and say that, you know, you always have as a business owner is going from employment to running your own business. That stability is
Mm,
always going to be a little bit rocky. You know, like I said earlier, you know, everything could change tomorrow.
mm.
Um, and that for me has is something that I have not felt in sort of like the past couple of years. That doesn't mean to say that the business isn't doing well. It's doing really well and it's definitely steady and we're continuously growing. But it is that as a CEO, it is that stability that is, I guess, the waking up at night.
Yeah, I mean, maybe my experience was sometimes when you're worried about making payroll and those sort of things can be pretty nerve-wracking. But let me just ask you about something slightly different. I mean, as you've been building the business, I know you've only been doing it for a couple of years, but have you faced any particular surprises where things have turned out or worked out the way that you really didn't expect? And maybe you had to deal with those kind of surprises?
Um, Yeah, I guess my biggest surprise that I had when I was building the business was the confidence drop that I had in myself, which I found quite surprising. You know, I did 12 years at JP Morgan, I did a couple of years at Arcade Media, and generally felt very confident in myself in the role that I was doing because I was very passionate about what everything that was kind of like going on. I was always the go-to contact. And I think going from that to being a solo entrepreneur, I found it very daunting. So it was a surprising factor for me that I had to regain and relearn how to get that confidence back so
How
that
did you do
I,
that? Let me ask you, how did you do that? Because that's a very interesting thing to say. How
yeah.
how did you get the confidence back? What is it you did to restore that?
So in essence, it always comes down to fear. And you know, I had a moment where I had a massive amount of reflection, and you know, fear is a choice. We get many choices in our lives, and 9 times out of 10, we don't actually get to make a choice. It's just kind of the cards are dealt, and then you crack on with it as a human being, and you move forward. It might not be a nice one, or it might be an amazing one, but you do move forward. When we're delivered a choice, let's take let's take Yorkshire Three Peaks as
This
as an
weekend, you mean?
example,
Yeah.
seeing as I recently did it.
Yeah.
I was faced with a choice. I got to the viaduct, and it was a case of I'm maybe just halfway, but now's my opportunity to say to my partner, okay, I can't do this. I'm not going to be able to meet it. I need to turn back. Or I can face my fears and, do the best that I can to be able to move forward.
Yeah.
Now, you can stay in your comfort zone and
Mm.
be like, I tried my best, I failed. I've learned a lot, but I'm not going to be able to do it this time, and turn back. Or you can get out of your comfort zone and push forward. Now, that first step is always going to be the hardest, but it's also going to be the most rewarding. And in that particular moment, for the case of me, I was like, well, I've come this far. I might still have about 7 or 8 hours left, but I didn't come all of this way, didn't drive all of this way to just to
Yeah.
turn back.
Yeah.
And it's the same when it came down to the business. I haven't come this far. I haven't done, nearly 2 decades of experience and only just built the business, at the time, to turn back only sort of like 3 months in. That absolutely was not on the cards for me.
Yeah.
So it was a case of, okay, so I could either go back and be an executive assistant as an employed member of staff at a particular company, or it was a case of I set out what I was looking to do and try harder and keep pushing and find that confidence back in order to be able to win those clients over. And I think when you choose to push forward, when you choose to move past that fear, it really helps with your mindset in order to be able to get those people on board with you.
I mean, somebody said to me, I forget who it was, somebody said, being an entrepreneur is about getting comfortable being uncomfortable.
Oh yeah,
And I think there's a
definitely
lot
is.
in that, isn't
Yeah.
there? Yeah, yeah. And in terms of the way you've been shaped, I mean, we talked about the transition from EA to CEO. What things have happened to you as the CEO? There have been critical moments that have kind of shaped you on the journey, things where you've had to kind of say, well, do I go that way or do I go this way? And that decision rests with you, doesn't it? I mean, it's all down
Yeah.
to you. There's no one to pass the buck to. I mean,
Yeah.
have you had moments, critical decisions to make that have shaped the way you view the job?
Definitely. And I'm very thankful to a particular client actually who had a really amazing conversation with me because it became very apparent that actually I had taken on all of the clientele, um, and more so than what I should have done, whilst also trying to run the business. And it was just too much. And it was at that moment, it was a case of I can either expand Premier Admin Services and bring a team of people on to be able to support the business and have a more of an agency outlook rather than just the likes of myself. Um, or this is going to crumble before my eyes. And I was very thankful for that very open conversation that the client had with me. They were like, this is a really great service, but we know that you're stretched too thin and we're beginning to feel it.
Yeah.
Um, so that really shaped me as a person, as a CEO, and therefore it also shaped what Premier Admin Services is now, like 18 months later. Which is great, which means that we've been able to grow. It means that I've had more time to be able to focus on the business and what that looks like and where we want to move forward. And it means that the VAs working with Premier Admin Services get matched with exceptional clients that they thoroughly enjoy working with and who are subject matter experts in particular fields, that works really well with different industries.
Mm. Mm. I mean, it sounds tremendously rewarding, actually. I mean, it sounds to me like you get a lot of that process, even though it doesn't sound easy.
No, it's not. It's definitely not been easy. I would definitely say it's been a bit of a roller coaster ride, but I absolutely wouldn't change it for the world.
Well, that's a
Like
good sign because you can't. Let me ask you about the flip side to that. I mean, what would you say are the factors that have made your business successful? Because it's done remarkably well. I mean, you've only been at it a couple of years. You've done really, I mean, we talked about this a little while ago. I mean, made really good progress in a relatively short period of time. What would you say are the factors that have kind of enabled that success?
The people. It's absolutely the people. I think, you know, the VAs that we brought into Premier Admin Services have really shaped what it is today. We've built a great community. We share insights and knowledge with one another. We cover each other. So if one of them is out of the office on holiday, we will always happily kind of like step in. I think it is our clientele. I have turned down certain clients because I don't like how they talk to assistants and because they don't understand what an assistant does and how they can be supported and the value add that it can bring. So I think as much as people would probably cringe at the fact that I turn around and say no, I think actually having those boundaries is really important because morale will dip very, very quickly if a relationship isn't working for whatever reason.
Yeah, and it's those relationships that keep the business going, isn't it? I mean, they're at the core of
It
what
really,
you do, aren't they?
100%,
Yeah.
100%. And I do think it's about that in-person interaction as well. I think because we do that, it really helps to build those relationships and that trust a lot quicker.
Yeah. Let me ask you about that. What would you say is the most um, enjoyable thing about building a business? What have you enjoyed the most about it? I mean, you always come across, whenever we've spoken, you come across as, with bags of enthusiasm, and I'm presuming that you enjoy building it. I mean, what would you say is the most enjoyable part about it?
think everything is there's no end to anything. If you've got an idea, nobody's there to turn around and tell you that you can't do it. So your creative side really transforms, it really comes out.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of having my website developed because I created mine. And as much as I can website develop, project manage, I can't design websites. But I did design mine. And as much as people say, oh, it's really lovely, it's not. So I've been able to come up with all of these lovely creative ideas and be like, this is my vision, like this is what I want. And a really good friend of mine is running with that, which is fantastic. But it's all of those creative things that is the possibilities are absolutely endless. If you want to do something, nobody's going to turn around and tell you that you can't, really, in the grand scheme of things. So you can just run with it. And for those people who feel like they can't, the only person that is actually stopping them is themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that makes entrepreneurship so interesting is that there aren't really no boundaries except what's in here. And I think that's it's one of the great things about it. And as you just described, I mean, I've spoken to lots of entrepreneurs over the years, and one thing that's always struck me is they're a pretty creative bunch, not in an arty sense necessarily, but they're pretty creative problem solvers, which I always think is very impressive. Let me ask you about the flip side to that. I mean, it's clear that you've enjoyed or are enjoying what you're doing. I mean, tell me about some of the mistakes you've made. I mean, my view is that there are only two kinds of people on the planet. There are people that make mistakes and people that pretend they don't. Most entrepreneurs are pretty open about making mistakes because if you don't fix them, if you don't identify the mistake, you're out of business. I mean, what would you say have been the biggest mistakes that you've made?
The biggest mistake that I have made to date was reacting in desperation at the very beginning of my business. I left my job, no clients that was bringing in money. And therefore, I really lowballed in the beginning what my services were and the value and the worth that I have to any business. And that has a real domino effect because you're then trying to bring in other clients on certain services, and then you've got all of these different clients on different services rather than it actually being sort of like it's not a one size fits all. Like we like to do that bespoke, but when you lowball yourself that low, it's very hard to get yourself out of that dark tunnel.
How
That
did
was
you, I mean, if that's what you did early on, I mean, you've fixed that problem now. I mean, how did you fix it?
it was just a very open discussion. This is where we are, this is where we were, this is where we are today, this is how we've changed, this is how we've transformed, this is how we've proved ourselves to be, worthy. And we've really shown you what we're capable of doing, and therefore this is what the price needs to be for that. Fortunately, we received no pushback. And we haven't with any of the other clients that we kind of had to do it with as well.
That must feel good in and of itself.
Yeah, it was really daunting. I think when you're employed, you're never asking for money, right? And then all of a sudden you go to being an entrepreneur and you are always asking for money every single month. And that can be really tricky. And you have to have the confidence in your numbers, because those are your numbers, and that that is what you are worth. That's what your business is worth. That's what, all of your subcontractors should be getting as well. So on that front, you just have to stand your ground. And for those clients that turn around and say no, that's fine. From my standpoint, I'm still happy to introduce them to other VAs to see that whether they would be better suited. But it's knowing your worth, it's knowing your prices and sticking to them. Don't act in desperation.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, that's what capitalism is about, isn't it? It's the exchange of value, and it's really, really important to understand the value that you create for people and to charge accordingly. I think. I mean, it's what makes business work, really. Let me ask you about what you've. I mean, a sort of a slightly different question, but about what you've learned along the way. I mean, if you were to go back to day one and you were starting from scratch, is there anything you do differently? I mean, beyond, I know you just talked about the pricing thing. Beyond that, is there anything you do differently, knowing what you know now?
I've always been the person to try really hard not to look back in hindsight, because I think everything that I have learned along the way, I've learned for a reason.
Right.
Um, and I've liked how I've learned. And yes, so there have been mistakes along the way. Um, but to that, I wouldn't change anything. Because looking back now to where we are today, it's such an exciting reflection
Mm.
and for any entrepreneur. When you look at when you first started to where you are today, guarantee you they've made mistakes, but the amount that they have learned, if they started, on day one where they were sort of like 2 years ahead, they wouldn't have learned anything. They wouldn't have gained anything out of that. Whereas for the likes of myself, I get a lot of fulfillment and satisfaction out of everything that I have learned over the past 2 years. And that will just continue. In another 2 years, we'll be having a conversation. And I, learn even more about, being an entrepreneur and where the business is going to go and how we've had to change and adapt and slightly move paths to make sure that, we're sticking ahead with the economy and with the clientele and what the needs are. Um, so no, if I'm being very honest, I don't think I would change how the business has kind of like moved
I mean,
forward.
it's interesting you describe it that way because I think a lot of entrepreneurs get a tremendous amount of fulfillment in being able to say, I've made all this progress. I mean, they may not be where they want to get to, but it's that sense of progress, I think, that drives people, or is part of the thing that drives people on. So it's really interesting to hear you describe it that way because I think that's a very powerful thing for a lot of entrepreneurs. Let me ask you, about advice. I mean, I'm sure you've had good advice from people along the way. If you were to offer a piece of advice to a rookie CEO, somebody starting out, perhaps on a journey a bit like yours, I mean, what kind of advice would you offer them?
I would say don't be afraid to ask for help. Get that support in as soon as possible. Whether it is a VA to be able to help you, whether it is somebody to help you with your pricing, whether it is a mentor that you are able to have, get somebody on your side to be able to provide some sort of support for you, because it can be lonely at the top. It can be isolating. So you need to have that circle of people, build that network, build those relationships, get out there. Just because you're working from home doesn't mean the outside world doesn't exist anymore. Absolutely get out there. And that factor that was really important for keeping that hybrid side of things for Premier Admin Services. So it's that twofold. It's that networking, it's that relationship building, it's making sure that you've got the support and asking for help when you need it, and doing so before it becomes too late.
I mean, what you're saying is business is about people.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's, I don't think AI is
People
going to
buy
change
from
that.
people. No, it won't.
No,
People buy from people.
yeah, yeah. One last question, which is about where you're going. I know you've got big ambitions because we've talked about it previously. I mean, what is it that excites you about the kind of the next chapter in the journey? I mean, tell us about, the direction of travel, the things
Yeah,
that you're looking
absolutely.
forward to now.
The the most exciting factor at the moment is the second part of the business. So obviously we've got our mentoring and coaching that I do. We've got the business side that we have been providing admin support, but we have just started to grow out our content creator side as well, which is awfully exciting.
What is
Because
it? Sorry, what is it that excites you about that particularly?
Because when I look at these individuals, they're very smart individuals. People don't always have that outlook. There's not a great level of understanding about content creators, about influencers. These people who have 10 million plus followers.
Yeah.
What they have done is they built businesses themselves, they built enterprises, and they're actually doing it extremely well. They've got their own teams, they've got their own offices, they've got their own business management, and nobody is aware of this. And for me, working with them is so exciting
Mm.
because you get to see a completely different avenue to what the outside world actually sees, because you see all of the back admin operational and how that all kind of like works, and it is very exciting. And plus, you do get involved in a lot of the personal stuff with the family and the friends. We've done engagement parties, we've helped out with hen do's and stag do's and weddings and all sorts, gifting and stuff. And it is just a very exciting journey to see these individuals who are genuinely extremely smart and know exactly what they're doing, but just in a completely different world to where business
Yeah.
is set.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it's interesting you said that. I mean, very early on with the podcast, I interviewed a creator who, I mean, she's got, millions and millions of followers across the US. I mean, she was as sharp as a tack, I can tell you. I mean, it was not a conventional business school
Yeah.
grad, if you know what I mean, but absolutely smart as a tack and very, very interesting. I mean, she gave a great interview on the podcast.
Yeah, I think they're personally, I feel like they're really misunderstood. And that's not what I see. I see amazing entrepreneurs.
Yeah, it's an exciting
And
world, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah,
Zoe, thank you for making a bit of time. I really
thank you for
appreciate
having
that. I
me.
mean, and good luck going forward. I mean, I mean, that sounds like a really exciting development for you and something that, will be really, really interesting, I'm sure. So, really appreciate you making a bit of time to come on. Thank you for sharing your story and good luck going forwards. And I'm sure I will hear lots about your success as things unfold.
Thanks so much for having me, Paul.
Cheers, Zoe. Bye bye.